Okay.
So welcome everyone to the first Insights Over Lunch discussion on the board rule and licensure. It is February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. So we do truly hope you all had a nice Valentine's Day, and we are very happy you could join us today. We are excited to have the opportunity to speak to the public and provide an overview of the board, its structure, makeup, and all the core elements that pertain to it. Furthermore, we look forward to discussing frequent misconceptions related to the board and answering any questions that potential or current licensees may have, or anyone else in the public. In addition, if you haven't enrolled in this discussion, you may obtain one CU for attending. So if you have not actually enrolled, then make sure you do so after the discussion. Although we will do our best to answer any questions at the end of the presentation you may have, we may not know the exact or complete answer immediately, and Diane Moore, our board administrator, can take those questions and get you a viable response post-meeting. So we will make sure to provide you a link specifically to answer any questions you may have regarding this presentation. You can make those requests in writing. So we felt that for the first Psych Board Insights Over Lunch meeting, that giving a thorough overview of the board, its structure, and various committees, along with the role of the board itself, would be a great place to start. We also look forward to your questions after the presentation, and we'll do a Q&A at the end where we can fire away at different questions, thoughts, comments. But now for some brief introductions. I'm just going to go ahead and I'll introduce myself. My name is Dr. Mark Cartwright. I'm currently a licensed psychologist and a licensed specialist in school psychology in Texas. I was appointed to this board in November of 2021, so I've served a little over a year now. And so Dr. Landon, as well as myself, we're the newbies on the current psych board. So we're the new ones, professional members. We were appointed at the same time. I was also nominated to the BHEC board in June of last year as one of the one professional member from the psych board, and then was just renominated in our last meeting in January for a 2-year term on BHEC last month. So I've been licensed in the state of Texas since 2008. I received my PhD in school psychology from Ohio State in 2007, and then matched into an APA accredited doctoral internship at Fort Worth ISD, and then followed suit for a postdoctoral fellowship in child clinical psychology at Children's Hospital in Dallas and outpatient psychiatry. And then after becoming licensed shortly in 2010, I started CareRight Clinical Services, PLLC, and we serve as a multifaceted mental health service organization. We specialize in psychological evaluations and therapy for children and adults in a private practice setting. And then we also provide psychological and counseling services to seniors, long-term care. And we also do medical clearance evaluations throughout Texas and the nation. And a lot of the areas that we serve are in rural areas throughout Texas. And so our services span almost all ages and demographics in the state of Texas, and in some cases nationwide. One interesting thing about my background is that I worked my way up to a caseworker 3 in the CPS system just before starting my doctoral program. And that experience was invaluable, and it allowed me to scout out all the various aspects of psychology, to talk to many real life providers in the field. Ultimately, it inspired me to become a psychologist, and it also shined light on many of the issues and problems that our society faces today, and the cyclical elements of mental illness as a whole. So becoming a psychologist has given me the opportunity to make a significant difference in the world and a better society. Both of my parents were teachers and later counselors in the schools. And at an early age, I learned to value our leaders and role models in the education and mental health system. And furthermore, through traveling, which I think is really important for everyone if you can do it, and learning about new cultures and ways of life, I learned that we become more holistic and complete as people and professionals. So I met my wife actually this very day 8 years ago, which is why we don't really do a lot of Valentine's celebrating. But because this is kind of the big day for us, this day we met. And I have 2 children, age 3 and 5. Well, 5 in 2 weeks. He'd be pretty angry at me if I threw him in the 4-year-old bucket being only a couple of weeks away. But that's me in a nutshell, and I'm going to hand it off over to our board chair, John Belanowitz.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. So my name is John Belanowitz, and today I'm coming from you from our fabulous Capitol building in Austin, Texas. If for any reason I have to duck out of here, I am supposed to go in front of the Senate Finance Committee to talk about BHEC and what we're doing to them. So I'm happy that the schedule worked out, that I'm here. I was appointed to the board in 2016. And a few years after that, I was appointed chair. As many of y'all know, I am not a psychologist. My business is in commercial real estate brokerage. I've also gotten into manufacturing. We manufactured an N95 respirator and certified it and make it 100% in the United States. We did that 2 years ago and continue to do that to this day. The reason people look at me kind of crossways sometimes when I tell them I'm the chair of the psychology board, and the reason that I'm here is that there's a handful of reasons, but the main reason is that mental health is so important to our state, to our country. There's so many problems with it and how we deliver it, and how many practitioners there are. And so I am incredibly proud to chair this board and to assist in making sure that from a regulatory side, that we're not in the way. A lot of times government needs to help. A lot of times government needs to get out of the way and let good people do what good people do. And so for that, I'm incredibly proud to be chair of this board. And I also serve on the Behavioral Health Executive Council as a member with Dr. Cartwright. I'm proud of him, and congratulations to his selection for another term. I'm looking forward. I see we've got the chat box up here as well. So obviously Q&A at the end. And then if you have questions in the meantime, just know that we are keeping an eye on the chat box and look forward to talking more. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Lambden.
Yes, good morning. As Mr. Blamowitz said, my name is Dr. Roxana Lambden, and I'm a clinical psychologist who works mainly in private practice. I've been licensed for 27 years, and my areas of interest are trauma, ADHD, ASD, and attachment theory and its applications. In my spare time, I do enjoy traveling. Like Dr. Cartwright said, I think if you can, traveling is wonderful, and it really gives you a lot of perspective in terms of a cultural lens. I have a husband. I actually do this with my family of my husband of 36 years, and we have 4 children together, and their ages are 29, and a daughter-in-law, 24, 19, and 17. I also was appointed with Dr. Cartwright to the board. So again, we're newbies. I'm a newbie, and I'm just kind of getting my feet wet in November of 2021. And I look forward to the time I have serving in the capacity that I can. Thank you. And our board administrator, I also would like to introduce Diane Moore, our board administrator, and our staff attorney, Mr. John Bridges, and Mr. Tim Spear as well. Diane?
Sure. You guys ready to get going or go with the slides? Or do you want us to share? I'm sorry.
If you're comfortable, you certainly can.
Sorry about that. Sure. I'm Diane Moore, the board administrator for the psychology board. I have about 28 years in boards and commission working for state government, mostly in Ohio. I'm here in Texas, learning the ropes here in Texas. And I have 2 kids. I have one my last one is graduating from high school this year from Stony Point, and I'm excited about his new career. He wants to go into welding. So a lot of people aren't interested in the crafts as much as they used to be, but he's doing well with that. But I'm a proud mom of two young men. So I'm glad to be here, and pass it on to John Bridges.
My name is John Bridges. I'm the staff attorney assigned to the psychology board. I've been with BHEC since the start, and before that I worked for the psychology board when it was still independent. And before that I was in private practice as an attorney for 21 years, mainly criminal defense, but I also did family law. So out of that experience, I got to see how mental health and the world collided and met each other. And I was also a foster father for a couple of years. So I've also seen the need for mental health in that arena as well. Mr. Spear?
Hello, my name is Tim Spear. I'm the Director of Operations for BHEC. I began my career with the state in 1995, and I've been with BHEC since the beginning. I was the unit manager for the 3 boards that came over from HHSC. So I have a considerable experience in that area. I will be manning the chat board typing away furiously, answering questions. I probably won't do much speaking in this one, so I'm going to turn off my video to help with the bandwidth.
A second here. Dr. Cartwright, can you guys see the shared screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I, for some reason, cannot, but hold on, let me.
Okay.
Ben, I can't see your screen, but I'm gonna just go ahead. I have the slides, so I'll just go ahead. And
Okay.
Take it away.
Sure. I have it up on slide 2 where it talks about topics covered
Okay.
today. So if you want to start there and then,
Perfect.
then I'll promote the next slide when you're ready. Mhm.
So today we've got several topics we're going to cover, but the main gist of today's presentation is to really give an overview of BHEC and TSBEP. So when we say BHEC, Behavioral Health Executive Council, TSBEP, Texas State Board Examiners of Psychologists. So we're going to speak to what those boards respectively do, the TSBEP committees and their functions, which is something that a lot of probably the general population or even licensees or to-be licensees may not know a lot about. Also rulemaking, which is extremely important in our board, licensure requirements, renewing a license, enforcement and complaints, and then SIPACT, and then also misconceptions about the board. We thought it was really important to cover that area. Resources for licensees and applicants, how to contact TSBEP and BHEC, and then obviously useful resources. So the first area that we wanted to discuss is just to give you an idea of BHEC itself. What is BHEC and what does it do? So the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council, or BHEC, was created in 2019 after sunset reviews, 2017 and subsequently in 2019. So prior to all of this, everything was under one board, and I believe it was just the psychology board at one point, where you had marital and family therapists, professional counselors, psychologists, and social workers all within that one board. But now the council actually consists of all 4 of those areas. So you have, again, Texas State Board of Examiners of Marriage and Family Therapists, professional counselors, psychologists, and social work examiners. So the BHEC board itself consists of 9 members approved by each of the 4 respective boards. So you'll have 1 professional and 1 public member from each board. And in our case, John is the public member on BHEC, and I'm the professional member on BHEC for the psych board. And then the chair, there's a 9th member, and that's our chair, and the chair is also currently a public member.
It's also worth noting that that's actually by statute. It's designed to be a +1 majority board, +1 public member majority board, and we'll get into the details of why that is later.
So how does the council accomplish the mission? The main area for the council is licensing, enforcement, and providing information. And it was originally established so that to improve and enhance the administrative functions and efficiencies needed to carry out these functions, and to provide active state supervision for rulemaking and enforcement functions. Then that leads us to our actual board on the psych board, TSBEP. TSBEP was actually formulated back in 1969, but recently in 2019, it was consolidated under BHEC. The Psychologist Licensing Act, the board's enabling legislation, you can see that in the occupations code, and we'll have links for all that at the end. That if you want to click on any of the links about like laws, rules, or any of those issues, you'll have that. But the actual individual boards are tasked with establishing the qualifications for licensure and renewal, as well as the ethical standards for the practice of psychology by psychologists, psychological associates, and then LSSPs in Texas. And again, our mission is to protect and promote the welfare of the people of Texas by ensuring that the practice of psychology is provided by qualified and competent practitioners, meeting those minimum standards. The board accomplishes that by establishing the qualifications for licensure and renewal, as well as the ethical standards for the practice of psychology in Texas. And then, as stated before, the board consists of 9 members appointed by the governor, and with the advice and consent of the Senate, you've got 4 psychologists on the board, 2 psychological associates, and then 3 public members. One of the psychologist or psychological associate members must also be an LSSP. And in this case, Andonia Zagoras and myself both, I'm a licensed psychologist and an LSSP, and then Andonia Zagoras is also an LSSP. So we've got actually 2 LSSPs on the board currently. And then I think that leads us to committees. So we'll hand it over to Dr. Lambden to speak a little bit about the different committees on our board.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit, like Dr. Cartwright said, about the committees. The Psychology Board has 4 committees. And the committees are the Applications Committee, the Compliance Committee, the Jurisprudence Committee, and finally, the Rules Committee. The board chair, they may appoint the board members to each of those committees. So I'm going to talk about each of those in turn in a little bit more detail. So the Applications Committee is composed of 3 board members, and it reviews licensure applications sent by staff for adherence to laws and rules. The Applications Committee, also they review exams, study plans. The application review, the committee also reviews application requirements as prescribed in the rules to determine if the documents meet the requirements, or they request additional clarification from the applicant. Then they also do or complete review of study plans. So the applicants who fail the exam 3 or more times are required to submit a detailed study plan to address either suspected or known deficiencies, and so in their areas of deficiencies. So the committee members review the study plans that are submitted and determine if the study plan gets approved or needs further revision. So the second one I'm going to talk about is the Compliance Committee. So the Compliance Committee is composed of 2 board members, and it reviews and monitors compliance of agreed orders. All committee members are required to adhere to all personal identification information and HIPAA confidentiality rules and regulations. So anybody that's undergoing one of this procedure is ensured of confidentiality, as would be expected. The third one that I'm going to talk about is the Jurisprudence Committee. The Jurisprudence Committee is composed of 1 board member, and it periodically reviews the psychology, the jurisprudence examination for relevance. They draft new questions or they revise existing questions as needed. They review the existing exam questions for relevance and then determine if the rules changes have impacted the questions. So this is constantly being undergone, and it's a dynamic process as information becomes available. If the rules change, the context of the questions, and then the committee must draft a proposed rule, proposed change to the question. The board will review the recommendations and approve or revise or disapprove the draft changes. If the proposed questions are approved, then the board administrator will submit the content and contact the exam vendor to submit the changes. Finally, we have the Rules Committee. So the Rules Committee is composed of 3 board members, and they may draft proposed rules upon its own initiative or upon the request of the chair of the board. The committee also may meet with stakeholders to obtain feedback on proposed rule changes, and will present recommendations to the full board for consideration at a following board meeting. John?
I see a question there. Can licensees volunteer to work with committees? I'll just take that. How does rulemaking work? Generally, no. Committee really, uh, my connection's unstable.
Yeah, you're choppy, John.
Can you guys choppy? Hang on, let me see if I can turn off my yeah, see. Can you guys
You froze a little bit.
hear?
Yeah, I think we lost him.
Okay,
Did-
well,
Yeah,
sorry. Since we did lose him, let's see, I think we had this slide covered by somebody else.
Sure, I can go into rulemaking. So again, how does rulemaking work under BHEC? It's a very important part of what we do as a board. So if the rule addresses one of the areas mentioned in the occupations code, I believe means. So it's section 507, it's limitations regarding certain rules. You can reference that and it'll give you the different stipulations as to what kind of rule or where it stems from. But if the rule does not address one of the areas mentioned in that area, the council may initiate rulemaking on its own. But generally speaking, if you want to change a rule related to process, you're going to talk to BHEC. If you want to change a rule related to licensing criteria, practice standards, CE requirements, or the schedule of sanctions, then you're going to talk to the appropriate member board first. And I can see John is back.
Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Okay, I'm on my cell phone now. Hopefully this
Yeah,
works.
okay.
Anyway, the question was about can committees, can the public work with committees? Generally, no. That's usually an internal process. Depending on the issue, we sometimes will solicit information from stakeholders. If there's something that somebody felt passionately about, as the chair, I would always certainly welcome a note to engage on any given issue. So I'll just tackle rulemaking real quick while I have a connection here. So generally, if there was a grand bargain, we talked kind of about BHEC's inception versus when it was just TSBEP. What happened was there were some Supreme Court cases that had to do with active state supervision, meaning were industry participants making all the rules that ostensibly benefited an industry. And that happened in some states and in some industries. And the court came back and slapped them down. How states deal with this, because our board was obviously a majority industry participant board with only 3 of 9 people being public members. That's where BHEC comes in. And the grand bargain that happened is that essentially all of the member boards, be it marriage and family therapists, counselors, psychologists, et cetera, retain the rulemaking of power to where the rules pertaining to psychology have to originate at the psychology board level. They go through a couple of processes before, which I'll get to in a second, of how it gets through the ultimate, essentially how a bill becomes a law, but how does an idea become a rule? So there's some filters that we have to put these through. One is it anti-competitive, and by its nature, restrictions on trade can be anti-competitive, meaning that I have no psychological training. I can't go out there and hang a shingle and say, hey, I'm a psychologist. I could say, well, you're not letting me compete. Well, sure, I'm not compete. Because guess what, John, you are not educated to be a psychologist. And so there's definitely something there in the public interest. Is the rule administratively consistent with state and federal law? Is it something that, we can't go out on a limb, even if it's a great idea, and overstep the bounds of the federal government or the state government? We do rulemaking, the legislature legislates. We don't have, as an agency, we don't have an opinion on legislation because it's essentially their car. They give us the keys, we give it. If we wanted to set that policy, then any of us should go run for office and set the policy, but we're not. So we understand our lane. And good governance, and the governor's office weighs in on that as well, is whatever this idea is it good governance? So we can go to the next slide, please, Ms. Moore. So this kind of goes again, this is sort of what I was already saying here about competition. And whether the absence, on point 2 here, where the absence of the proposed rule poses a significant risk or harm or danger to the public. Anything we do has to pass muster of, essentially, if we ask why, something Toyota did, if you ask why 5 times, you can a lot of times get to the root cause of things. When I'm asking why, when somebody has an idea for a rule or we're being asked to do something, I'll ask why. And if the ultimate answer is not, this is good for the public, then I'm going to have a much harder time bringing that to a place of passage, because that's ultimately, if it's going to pass muster, that's ultimately what it has to do. I've heard testimony from industry participants for saying things like, hard for my license, and it's your job to protect it. Like literally, that's probably not verbatim, but it was pretty close. And my answer to that, no, sir. It is, our job is to protect the public, not your license, not your job. Ultimately, though, we have to create a framework, though, that if we don't have a framework that allows you to be in business, obviously, if we were doing something that was running people out of business, that's not good for the public either, because then we wouldn't have any psychologists. So as a business person, I understand that too. Let's see here. So this is, that's a good slide in terms of what I was just talking about. I want to see what's next. That's it. Okay, yeah, that's essentially it. So I'm going to pass it. Actually, no, that's about it. We can get into some Q&A later on that if anyone has questions on that. But I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Cartwright now.
Okay, so obviously a lot of this information you're going to be able to get off the website or in the handbook, but we wanted to just give a general overview of what the basic requirements are for each specific license, being the LP, licensed psychologist, the LSSP, licensed specialist in school psychology, and the LPA, licensed psychological associate. So, and again, these sometimes can vary, as rules change, but these are the basic requirements as of now. There are some more details if you actually look in the handbook, but we wanted the general rules here. Do you want me to list them, Diane, or should we just go?
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's up to you. I didn't know if you was going to read it all, or just how you mentioned it. It is available on our website.
Yeah, it's available. So one thing I did want to just kind of bring up, this will kind of stem some Q&A down the road and probably its own insights over lunch on a completely specific, different date and time. But this whole, the passage of the EPPP, we all know as part of part 1 is part of becoming, to become a licensed psychologist, you obviously have to pass that EPPP part 1. But they have now, ASPPB has come out with, we haven't had an oral exam for about 4 years now. I think it was 2017 or 2018, we haven't had an oral exam, but they are trying to re-implement that EPPP part 2, which is a very big debate. There's a lot of debate going on right now. So you're going to see a lot of heat around that issue going forward, up until when it's supposed to be enacted here in a few years. So just kind of throwing that out there. But again, you can see the basic requirements for the different licenses. And the one key on the LSSP here is that the 600 of those hours of formal internship have to be in a public school. So that can cause some issues if the training isn't done in the correct setting. A lot of times people are wanting to transfer credits from a different type of program that may not have been an actual public school setting, and that can cause some licensing issues. So just kind of keep that in mind. But definitely make sure you know all of everything that you need, and especially when it comes to internship and postdoctoral requirements, because that's where, as a board, we see the most issues. Programs are set in place. They're supposed to do, give the training and all the sort of minimum requirements needed. But a lot of times where people get into trouble is when they're not meeting that doctoral internship requirements and then postdoctoral internship requirements. So just always keep that in mind. And also on the LPA that we just kind of passed over, that again, they are actually able to apply for independence practice. And so there's some additional right here. Yeah, they've got to have 3,000 hours of postgraduate degree, supervised experience within 24 to 48 months. And again, they have to apply for independent practice with the board.
And can I add something to that?
Sure.
People who are doing the independent practice that choose to work in a tax exempt setting, or exempt setting, if they want to use those hours, they still need to follow the documentation requirements. If you were in a non-exempt setting, in order to use those hours. Otherwise, you cannot count that towards that. You'll have to do your 3,000 hours over again in the proper setting. Because in most exempt settings, they don't follow the documentation guidelines like they would in a setting that is not exempt. We had that come up before, so. Yeah.
And then this takes us to license renewal. The process obviously has changed, as a lot of you know now, that are already licensed, that now we're on a biennial basis. So it used to be every year, but biennial also means twice the amount of CEUs, and I mean, obviously it's the same amount of time yearly, but biennial, you've got, if you're waiting to the very end, you got to get all those CEUs. It's not, so I think it's 40 hours now. And so again, a lot of changes are going on right now. You've probably seen a lot of things thrown out there on the various boards about CEUs and what counts and who can provide them, and et cetera, et cetera. So those are all obviously areas that are up for discussion, but we're seeing a lot of public comment about that. But again, just make sure that if you have like multiple licenses, that you are renewing both. Even if you don't really use one, you still have to go through all the channels. And really, that's about all we got to say here. I mean, you obviously look at your handbook, make sure you know license renewal. All this stuff is on the website as well.
I'm going next, and I'm going to cover our complaints handled under BHEC. So we're going to summarize the complaint process. And so initially, when a complaint is received by the council, the investigator reviews the complaint to determine whether or not a violation has been committed, and just on the face of the complaint. And if not, then the complaint is dismissed. If they determine that a violation on the face of it probably was or could have been committed, then it's sent to investigations. Then the licensee is sent a notice, a violation, a NOVA or a NOV. An investigation ensues at that point, and if no probable cause is found, then the complaint, is dismissed. On the other hand, if a probable cause is found, then the licensee is either sent a proposed agreed order, or the other option is an offer for informal conference is made. So if the applicant chooses an informal settlement conference, and if they're offered that option, the staff or disciplinary panel, they may recommend a sanction, or a proposed agreed order is sent. If the staff or disciplinary panel recommends dismissal, then again, the complaint is dismissed. So next slide, how are complaints handled under BHEC? So formal versus informal disposition of complaints. So complaints resolved through an agreed order, then following an informal conference, they're approved by the executive director first, the board, or the council. Contested complaints are referred to State Office of Administrative Hearings, or the SO. for a contested hearing. So the next step is the board must review the complaints they heard at a contested hearing, and then they make a recommendation to the council about the appropriate sanctions for that individual and then the violations that were committed. The council then must follow the board's recommendation, unless doing so would violate good governance concerns and be administratively consistent, or excuse me, be administratively inconsistent, or have an anti-competitive impact. And again, we talked about wanting to diminish competition. Number 4, the appeal of the council decision in contested cases must go through the state court system. So now we move on to PsyPACT. So if you probably all have heard about PsyPACT, hopefully by now. It is called PsyPACT for short, informally, but officially it is the Psychology that's a mouthful, Interjurisdictional Compact. And it's an interstate compact designed to facilitate practice of telepsychology and temporary in-person practice, face-to-face, of psychology across state boundaries. Texas was one of the first ones to adopt PsyPACT pursuant to House Bill 1501 at the 86th legislative session, and that was in 2019. So licensees that are part of PsyPACT must physically be in their own state at the time when they render service through telehealth to individuals in other PsyPACT participating states. And they must adhere to the rules of their own, obviously their own state, but also of the state that they're delivering services into. And if you want further information, we have provided a website for further information if you wanted to dig a little deeper into that. So as of the end of January of this year, we have, and you can see the list, I won't go through all of them, but you can see there are currently 33 states currently participating and that have enacted and are currently, allowing PsyPACT practitioners to be part of and deliver into their state or from their state. They're part of the PsyPACT agreement. There are states also that have pending legislation, and these are not yet. So Rhode Island, as it states there at the top, theirs becomes effective March 1st of this year. There are 3 other states, Massachusetts, Michigan, and New York, which currently have active PsyPACT legislation. It has not been enacted and there's no guarantee, but they do have active PsyPACT legislation going on currently. Okay, so now we move on to the next slide, which talks about misconceptions. And Dr. Cartwright alluded to these at the beginning when he was giving an overview of the presentation for today. And what we did is we wanted to talk about 5 of them that we could think of, or through experience we've been have been know about. So the board and the board members respectively do not provide legal counsel to licensees or the public. You must obtain your own legal advice if you have a legal concern or a question or need representation. The second one is the function of the board is not to answer practice-related questions. Sometimes, we have, people calling in and they have questions about their practice, sort of things, and we don't offer, unfortunately, that type of advice. It's just a regulatory body is what we are. The function of the board is to not only handle situations, questions that administrative staff can't handle or don't have the answers to, and those on current laws, policies, and procedures. The mission and role is to protect and promote the welfare of the people of Texas by ensuring that the practice of psychology is provided by qualified and competent practitioners. And finally, we kind of wanted to give some juxtaposition. The general role, in contrast, of the state agencies and professional associations is to advocate for the practice of psychology and inform practitioners on vital issues related to the field. The TPA, the Texas Psychological Association, is the leading professional organization in Texas for psychologists. All right. Thank you.
Okay. And these are just some resources of how to contact the board. Our single point of contact is to use our contact us link that is on our website. And from there, you're able to select a category based on which board, or if you have questions, general questions over, for BHEC and so forth. So there's a drop down that you'll be able to access there. And then you can also go on our site to sign up for the email updates if you're not already included in there. I don't know if I'll get out of this, if it'll go there or not. So the email updates, it's on our main council page here. And then, trying to see, there's a bulleted list here. For if you click here, it'll take you to this page here. And that's how you add your name to that list. If you click on the contact us link and scroll down, this is how you're able to send your questions into the board. And you're able to select to narrow down, the general topic that you have, and then you'll provide your information and submit it. And it'll be forwarded to the appropriate staff to help address your questions. 1 second here. Our next resource is we do have statutes and rules links that is on our website. And you can get this on every web page under our council. On the bulleted list on the side, there's a statutes and rules link. And we do have a consolidated rule book that's updated periodically that you can click on. And you'll have all the rules for BHEC and for that particular member board. Of course, it didn't take me to the first page of it. So, and there's a table of contents here with some hyperlinks that will take you to the specific rule. And another good resource that we have available is when we have rules that are proposed rules and adopted rules. We do post them on our board news site, but this is a way you can go in through the Texas Register. You're able to go on their site directly and look at the current issues, either in PDF or HTML. And then you'll be able to pull up each individual rule under the member board that's posted a proposed rules. You can also go into the Texas Register and you can do it more specific. A specific search. And if you use these percentage signs, you can get to us a little faster. And then here you're able to see what rules are proposed or repealed. And then anything that's final or adopted. So you would click on these hyperlinks on the side. Let me try to pick a more current one here. 1 second. It might be a little out of order. But when you click on them, this particular portion was withdrawn at the time, but there's a preamble that kind of gives you information about the rule itself, and that we have the authority to make these changes, and any information of why we are proposing the change. And then you want to actually see the language that's been changed or proposed. You click on the Texas Register size, and it'll actually show you what was posted in the Texas Register document as a whole. But this way you can pull up each individual rule. Okay. And some other links that we wanted to point out for you guys are our renewal portal. And here, what I want to show you here is if you scroll down, there's each member board has information about some key things that you need to know in order to renew your license, the number of hours you need, 6 hours in ethics, and then there's the human trafficking requirement of 1 hour. So all that information is available on this renewal screen here. On our forms and publications link, and typically the way you would get to that for the psychology board, you would click on the title in the upper right corner, and then you would go down on the side and select forms and publications. And here you can see our application checklist. There's policies and guidelines. And then there's other information that's, the study plans on here, the rule related to that is on here. Our guidelines for the practice of telepsychology and our guidelines for social media. So all that can be found here on our forms and publications link. And then we do have a frequently asked questions link here, and it has the questions, and you click on the plus sign, and then you can get a general response to those questions. All right.
So now we can get into the Q&A for this one. So
Yes.
maybe the less frequently and more specific asked question time for all of you who are here. And so we appreciate everybody who's participating and watching. I saw one in the Q&A just a second ago. I'm doing this on my phone now, so I'm limited. The question, can licensees view complaints against other licensees? And I believe the answer is no. Now, final things that are finally decided are public record. But everyone gets their due, and we investigate these things. And if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. If there is something there, then that becomes a record. John, did I mess up any of that, or is that all accurate?
Sounds good to me.
I have the distinction of not being an attorney and not being a psychologist, so sometimes I have to get my work checked.
That's fine. So if anyone in the public would like to ask a question verbally, you can raise your hand and I can call on you if you want to ask a question to the board. We'll accept those questions at this time.
And this isn't a board meeting. This is not a public record for posterity and everything else. So feel free to ask away. Stupid questions are welcome. While we're waiting and queuing that up, there was one thing I just want to highlight how important public engagement is on this stuff. We've had to do a lot of rulemaking because the landscape is changing underneath our feet right now, and it requires us to address a lot of things. There's a lot of bad ideas that have come up. Some of them have even been my ideas. And through public engagement, we've made this process a lot better. So I just want to take this opportunity to highlight the importance and how much we appreciate the engagement of our licensees and of the public as well.
We have no
questions.
Yeah, there's no questions formulating right now, so we have about 10 minutes to go. Were there any other?
I guess we just want to leave it with closing remarks from Dr. Lambden and Dr. Cartwright.
Sure. You want to do closing remarks? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Well, actually, hang on. We have some Q&A coming in.
Okay.
But we do have a hand up.
Oh, I see. Okay, let's. Is that a live question? We'll get to the Q&A here in a minute.
Okay.
I just want to point out that in the investigation process, if it makes it to the point where I think I need to get some answers from the respondent or the licensee, I'm sorry, I have to send it certified mail. I know there are many instances where just a phone call could answer the question, but the statute requires that I make initial contact by certified mail.
Mhm. Eleanor Wills, did you have a question for us?
Yes. Prior to, so I've been an analysis P licensed in Texas for over 2 decades, and I feel like there was a time before we had this this unified committee, lack of better word, where we could view complaints that were allegated towards or allegations of complaints towards fellow licensees. I feel like that was something that was viewable in some fashion. It wasn't when we had the published books. It was more like there was just section where there was, I don't know. I feel like there was some level of communication about that was allowed for fellow licensees. And I may be wording it incorrectly, but I feel like that was in the past something that was permissible. It may be that the attorney has said no, that should never have happened or something like that. But I feel like I was reading a lot about allegations for people with rule infractions, like way back when.
If you are making, if what you are referring to, it was nicknamed the naughty list. But even then it was for public things that had already been resolved.
Do we still have, is that still something that's being published as well now?
We don't maintain that list, but on our website, there is a link under, I believe it's checking license. There is a link that takes you to another website, and they maintain all public items that have been taken against a licensee.
And can you explain to me again, how do you access that link?
It is on our website. It is, let me pull it up real fast. It's one of the bullet points. Let's see. It's 4 from the bottom, verify a license or check license status. If you click on it, it will take you to online search, verify a license, and then that will transport you to another website, and that'll give you the public findings on a licensee.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the public? You can raise your hand. We do have one caller. That might be John, though. John, you called in, right?
No, I'm on the app.
Okay. I can check with this caller to see if they have a question for us. Caller, do you have a
I think
question?
there might have been a question too about the update on LSSPs using the title of school psychologist. I know right now, I think that's just being mulled out. It's going to be going back down to the board, to the psych board, to discuss it further, and we'll see what happens there. But definitely public comment. We'll be looking at a lot of public comment on that issue, and I think it's kind of under further review right now.
Thank you.
I had a question. I'm a call in.
Good after.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Good morning. This is John. Who are we speaking with?
Good morning. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Jamie Garcia, and I had a question in regards to the changes that have been made regarding the policies and procedures for fellowship. And noticed in the licensing rules and regulations that it now states that there are, if you attended an APIC or an APA accredited internship program, and there are, I think, a set of guidelines that if you had followed these, that there are a certain amount of hours that you may be able to submit towards your fellowship hours or your postdoc that would count towards those 3,000 hours if they meet certain criteria. And I was wondering about that process, if there will be any place to locate specific details on that, or how many hours can be submitted and documentation.
When you said, did you say that was, do you know what rule that was under?
I'm sorry, I don't have it pulled up offhand.
Because I think.
It's for the postdoctoral
I do know
fellowship
that,
residency is 3,500 hours.
I do know that some of those hours can be counted if it's APA accredited. I just don't know the exact amount off the top of my head without looking at the rule. My guess would be you would just submit the documentation of your APA accredited program, submit that to the board, but I don't want to speak out of place here, so.
That's a really specific question. I would love it if we could get that, if you could email us that question and we can actually get you that answer specifically, because that's again, really specific for us to answer on the spot here in this setting. I think it's really important that we get it right for you. So Diane, do we have the, can we get an email address of where she can send that to and we can get her an answer?
Sure, the best way to do that is use our contact us link on our website and submit that question in. And if you can be a little more specific about which license type you're referring to, and if you do have the rule citation, so we can clear that up for you.
And tell us your name
Yes,
again so we
so
can be
much.
looking for that.
Jamie Garcia.
All right, so Jamie, we're going to be looking for your note.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Thank you. Okay, we do have one more, Ellen Everett. Barrett, excuse me.
You answered my question. My question was about an update on the LSSP use of the school psychologist title. I just was, that was my question.
Okay.
While we've got you, I'm
You
curious,
answered it.
while we've got you, do you have any comments or opinions or perspectives on it?
Yeah, I actually I do. And I did do a public comment through the, the email. I'm a licensed psychologist as well as an LSSP, and I work in Fort Bend ISD exclusively in the public school setting. Personally, in my experience, using LSSP and having to say it, licensed specialist in school psychology, multiple times during a meeting or during an interview, or it's sometimes confusing to the public, not to us, but even sometimes to the school staff who are not, kindergarten teachers may not be familiar with that title. And I just think it might be beneficial to our families, and even, as I said, to some school staff, if we could be more specific that we are functioning as school psychologists. That's my comment.
Yeah, we've seen that in public comment, and I've heard that anecdotally, almost verbatim of what you said. So thanks for indulging us.
And the other part too is because we work very frequently with speech and language pathologists who have the same SLP in their title, and we tend to abbreviate everything. That's also somewhat confusing. So yeah, I have to tell people, nope, I'm not a speech pathologist, I'm an LSSP. So yeah, that was my comment. Thanks.
Good deal. Thanks so much for participating today.
Thank you.
Well, any other questions? If not, it looks like we're going to get everyone done on time.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. All
right. So on behalf of the board, just again, thank you to everyone's participation. Thank you for the good questions. We look forward to doing more of these. And you guys, I think the bottom line is know that we're engaged, know that we want to be responsive to y'all. So don't ever be afraid to reach out to any of us individually or to the board. And we'll get you taken care of. So Dr. Lamb and Dr. Cartwright, y'all want to say anything?
Yes,
I just want to say, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank everybody who took an interest, took their lunch hour and spent it with us. Today was an overview just of, just the workings, the broad overview of, just the BHEC, the board, Psych Pact, and all sorts of things. And we look forward to hearing from all of you and your suggestions for future topics for us to cover. Some of them might be more topical, but and there might be other areas I think that we can also provide some sort of clarification or issues to address in future insights over lunch. So thank you.
Yes, again, thank you all for attending. And as Dr. Landon said, there's a lot of debatable topics coming down the pipe. So I think we'll have a lot of things to discuss, and we hope to do more of these in the future. We appreciate everyone's attendance. And again, if you have any other questions post meeting, you can always use the contact us form or email us directly. So.
Okay. Thank you. This wraps up our Lunch and Learn for today. Thank you for participating.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.